What up, everybody? Happy summer. How's it going? Hope you're all doing well. Just wanted to check in, and it's been a minute since we've recorded one of these AMAs, one of these Ask Me Anythings, but I felt like with our reduced volume of episodes, we're now putting up episodes one a week, which we tend to do through the summer and the holidays. I just felt like what better time than now to record a new AMA, check in with you guys on Instagram, answer some lingering questions that y'all have had, and also just to send my well wishes to you wherever you happen to be, and that you're enjoying the summer healthily, happily, surrounded by people that you enjoy being around, and being safe and all that good stuff. So, what up? The questions, per usual, were really fantastic. I mean, you guys are such nuanced thinkers, and I know it's hard to convey a lot of nuance in that little question box that I post on Instagram, but you guys, nonetheless, you asked some really good questions. So let's just dive right in. MSERI wrote, "There are still many nutritionists who consider red meat bad, but it's my preferred protein source." Well, I think calling red meat categorically bad is an oversimplification, and I would seriously question the credibility of any nutritionist who just says universally that red meat is bad, because while you don't need to consume red meat, it is one of the most nutrient-dense foods available to us. It's a rich source of iron, highly bioavailable protein, zinc, vitamin B12, creatine. It's tasty, it's palatable, which matters. And so I think that it is, again, a pretty negligent oversimplification to just universally blanket make the claim that red meat is bad. I actually don't think that I think that I would consider that to be an extraordinary claim for which there really isn't the extraordinary evidence to support it. If you look at observational studies, red meat consumers typically, because red meat has been so demonized for the past couple of decades, people who tend to consume more red meat also tend to be more likely to smoke. They tend to be more likely to have obesity and insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. They tend to be more likely to consume alcohol. So the observational evidence on red meat consumption, I don't think is very trustworthy, useful as a hypothesis generator, which observational studies tend to be. But when you look at the randomized controlled trials, I mean, in the context of a high quality diet, red meat is perfectly healthy. And again, it's an incredibly nutrient dense food that I think is definitely worth integrating into your diet. I consume red meat maybe every day. And the caveat that I guess I would add is that I tend to consume lean red meat, particularly since I've been more body composition focused over the past couple of years. But in general, I think that that's a very smart choice regardless, because you have to remember that the red meat that we derive from our industrial farming system tends to be fattier than wild game, artificially fattened due to the grain consumption. Cows, their biologically appropriate diet is typically grass. And so to feed cows a bunch of grain to fatten them up in the latter stages of their life, I mean, that's what's done in the factory farm system. And so you have to remember that red meat tends to be fattier now than it ever has been historically. So there's that. I also think that it's worth paying attention to the population statistics that show that it's only a small minority, a small percentage of the saturated fat, which tends to be what people perseverate on when they demonize red meat. They say, oh, well, it's a source of saturated fat. Well, only about 3% of the saturated fat in the diet comes from unprocessed meat, excluding mixed dishes. People tend to ingest a lot of red meat from lasagnas and burritos and things like that, fast food. But when you actually look at where the saturated fat comes from, only a small minority, a small percentage comes from unprocessed meat. So like steak. So yeah, I'm not completely disagree with the statement that red meat is bad. There are certain people for whom red meat is, in a way, a form of medicine. People who have iron deficiency anemia, for example, they should probably consider eating more red meat. Again, it can be lean. I think that's completely reasonable, a reasonable form of red meat, a reasonable variety to prioritize, lean red meat, which exists. It's also very inexpensive. It's very protein efficient. With lean red meat, you get, and it's a wonderful source of bioavailable protein, as I mentioned, but it also doesn't contain any carbohydrate calories, and it contains little fat calories if you opt for lean. So yeah, I disagree with the statement that red meat is bad. That's old thinking and dogmatic thinking, and I disagree with it. So yeah, eat as much as you want. Just make sure that it's, lean if you're going to eat a lot of it, would be my 2 cents. Okay, SI Tattoos asked, which creatine gummies work? That's a great question. We have no affiliation here with any creatine gummy manufacturer, but I did look into this a little bit. There have been some third-party tests done that have shown that many creatine gummies actually don't contain the amount of creatine that they promise to contain on the label. The problem with creatine is that it isn't very stable in water. So this is a production problem. Depending on when the creatine is mixed into the gummy formulation in question, that may or may not accelerate its degradation. And also you throw into the mix the acidic environment that is sometimes can be used to describe these gummies that often will contain citric acid and other acids. That can lead to an accelerated degradation of the creatine, whether or not that the original amount that manufacturers put into their gummies was what was on the label. Over time, that can degrade. So you just want to make sure that you're buying from a reputable manufacturer. Again, we have no affiliation here with any creatine gummy manufacturer, but I know that Create has Darren Kando on the board, and he is one of the more highly regarded, if not the preeminent expert in the creatine space, and he's an advisor to that company. And I know from what I recall, that brand seemed to have levels that were closely related to its label claims. Create also, they make their certificates of analysis at least partially available, and they're NSF certified for sport. There are other brands that also do creatine gummies really well from what I've read. Now, with the caveat being, the asterisk being that I haven't lab tested these products myself. But Legion is another good one. We have no affiliation there. They make their certificates of analysis available. Their third-party tests were done via LabDoor. And then there's another company, I've never tried these, but creatine gummies from a company called Wild Gains. They also make their lab results available via a lab called Eurofins, and the results passed, and they are also NSF certified. So based on my sort of very preliminary look at the lab results that are available, which brands make their COAs available, Create, Legion, and Wild Gains with a Z seem to be pretty good. So you can check them out. Now, why take creatine gummies? Well, in the past, I would have said, well, gummies are kind of pointless. You're just ingesting calories that you don't need to hit your creatine target, which is about 3 to 5 grams every day of creatine. But sometimes the powders get kind of fatiguing. I mean, I try to take creatine every day, but sometimes the idea of choking down flavorless sand just doesn't sit well with my stomach. So I actually do have some creatine gummies in the house, and I will pop them occasionally when I'm just bored of taking creatine the old-fashioned way. And yeah, the gummies range typically from about 30 calories per serving for a 5-gram creatine dose to about 60 calories per serving. So those calories count. They don't not count just because you happen to be taking them alongside creatine. But I do think that, there's no harm if it's going to help you better adhere to your creatine regimen to take them in gummy form, so long as the brand that you're taking that you're that you're taking actually provides the creatine. You're not just taking empty gummy calories and being misled by the claims. So yeah, hope that helps. Great question. Moving on. So we got Rich Senapati. I have no idea how to pronounce that, but they asked, how would you rate walking as an exercise? For general health, I would give walking a 10 out of 10. Walking is a form of LISS, low intensity, steady state exercise that can be sustained. It's totally enjoyable. It's low impact. It's light on the joints. We're built to walk. I know my friend Mark Sisson would agree with me in saying that. There are harder forms of cardio that will burn more calories, but that also comes with risk and impact on your joints. And also some people just don't enjoy doing hard cardio. I personally do not. There have been moments in my life when I've committed to, building a running routine for myself, and it doesn't last very long. I just don't enjoy it. It's hard on my low back. It's tough on the joints. It builds hunger. Walking to me is something that you can do anytime. I genuinely enjoy it. You can go to a treadmill and read, on a Kindle while walking at a moderate pace. And I also find that though harder forms of cardio will burn more calories than walking, the perceived exertion is far higher with harder forms of cardio, obviously, but the perceived exertion for me with walking is so low, I could do it almost mindlessly. And the calorie burn is not something to shake a stick at. Like, it's still pretty significant. And again, it can be sustained. You can do it with friends. There's a social component to it. It's easy to integrate into your workday. You can take calls while walking. You can listen to this podcast while walking. And it also seems to be associated with lower mortality. A major 2025 review found meaningful benefits around 7,000 steps per day. So that means you don't even necessarily need to hit 10,000, which is a nice little target to set for yourself. But it's kind of an arbitrary number. It traces back to marketing from a Japanese pedometer. 7,000 is a pretty good sweet spot. I typically will aim for around 8 to 10,000 steps per day. And again, mostly because I enjoy it and it's so sustainable. You can explore new neighborhoods and plenty of really healthy people. Oh, I should also mention that it's the de facto form of cardio of the world's longest lived populations. Like, you go around the world, you travel around the world. I think blue zones are kind of a scam, but nonetheless, like, people tend to be pretty healthy in less industrialized parts of the world, Okinawa, Japan. Like, these populations are not slaving away on treadmills and ellipticals and Stairmasters. Like, their de facto form of cardio is walking, and then maybe they do some form of resistance training with their daily lives. In the modern industrialized first world, we kind of often have to supplement these forms of activity. So, many of the healthiest people, some of the most jacked people that you'll see on social media aren't doing hard forms of cardio. They're lifting weights and then they're just walking regularly. And that's personally what I do. So circling back to the question, how would you rate walking as a form of exercise? 10 out of 10. If you like doing harder cardio, do it. There are certainly benefits to that, but you don't have to. And I think at the end of the day, building your exercise regimen around exercises that you enjoy is the most important variable. So yeah, if you enjoy walking, keep at it. And don't let anyone talk you down from doing it, because it's so good. It's so good, so low risk. And again, we are built to walk. Erica Hatt asked, resistance training tips for people who get injured easily or older people. Well, I would say start light. You want to earn the right to add weight. Stable exercises, looking for exercises where there's an increased stability. So machines, I think, are fantastic for that reason. There have been a number of studies to come out as of late. There used to be this dogma in the lifting sphere. When I was growing up, there was always this emphasis on free weights. Free weights were superior to machine weights to machines. And what the evidence has shown over the past couple of decades is that there really is no meaningful difference between the muscle gain that can be achieved with doing exclusively machine lifts and free weights. So machines, one of the major benefits of machines is that they're very safe. You can really push yourself to your limit on machines. And then the stability of machines is what tends to lend them an added edge when it comes to safety, especially if you're naive to training. You also want to minimize momentum. You want to just make sure that you're controlling your weight. You always want to pick a weight, even if it's really heavy, that you can comfortably control. And that feels good. You don't want to feel pain when lifting. You might experience some delayed onset muscle soreness in the days after a workout, especially if you've chosen novel exercises or maybe you pushed your volume past what your norm is, but there really should not be any pain when lifting. And then I'll just add that resistance training is safe. I mean, there is resistance training does tend to have the reputation that it leaves you more injury prone, but in my survey of the literature, more injuries seem to occur from hard aerobic training, like hard cardio, whereas resistance training, if you're doing it properly, it tends to be very safe. So, I think everybody should be resistance training, no matter where they are on the age spectrum. And resistance is a wide bucket. It's a big bucket. Like it could be resisting against gravity, push-ups, pull-ups, controlled negatives if you can't yet muster a pull-up. Squats, bodyweight squats, wall sits. There's not one exercise when it comes to resistance training that you have to do. You generally, a well-balanced resistance training regimen is going to involve typically a squat, a pressing movement like a bench press, and a pulling movement like a pull-up. But you don't have to do a pull-up. You could do a lat pull-down. You don't have to bench press. You can use a machine chest press. You can do push-ups. So one of the things that has become abundantly clear to me is that we have a lot more flexibility when it comes to to exercise selection than is often made out on social media. You'll often come across influencers that make it sound like you have to do, a specific exercise. You're missing out if you're not deadlifting. I don't squat. I don't deadlift. I do that because I'm trying to protect, I'm on the wrong side of 40, so I'm trying to protect my joints. But also I have, I've had a history of low back issues. And so, you just want to do what's comfortable for your body at the end of the day. With those sort of caveats, you want to be training your legs, you want to be training your upper body, or, the anterior side of your body as well as the posterior side of your body. Hope that helps. Don't fridge with my food. You guys have some interesting usernames. Asked, what do you eat when you fancy something indulgent or a treat? I like that question. There's a lot. Pizza, I don't know. Pizza I think is great. I discovered these cupcakes recently that these gluten-free cupcakes. I picked them up from Sprouts by a brand called Antonina's. The best cupcakes I've ever had in my entire life. Gluten-free cupcakes. I think they're available widely nationwide in various supermarkets, but I found them at my local Sprouts, both here in Los Angeles as well as in Las Vegas. Antonina's gluten-free bakery. They also have a website, no affiliation, but shout out to Antonina's Bakery. Best cupcakes, encompassing gluten-free and the regular ones, full-on wheat flour-based cupcakes. Best cupcakes I've ever had. Available at Sprouts. In vanilla, they have a cookies and cream, they have chocolate. So damn good. So I'll go ham on those. I mean, those are, I think in one sitting, I've at some point eaten like 2 or 3 of them. They're that good. I love sweets. I definitely have a sweet tooth. I love red velvet. I love vanilla. I'm not as big of I prefer vanilla, and I don't like fruit commingled with my desserts. I like fruit to be fruit. And then for the most part with my desserts, I like my desserts to be vanilla, cinnamon, coffee, non-fruit flavors, if that makes sense. There are some exceptions. I mean, I do enjoy the occasional apple pie with ice cream. I do like, what else do I like? carrot cake, like carrot cake with a good icing, 10 out of 10. But in general, yeah, like I won't go near, it's kind of weird. My mom's favorite cake of all time was strawberry shortcake. I won't go near a strawberry shortcake. I won't go near a berry crumble. I won't go near, like, fruit flavored cakes for me are a non-starter with the exception of apple pie. Am I weird? I am weird, but it's just my, but vanilla, red velvet, a good carrot cake. What else? A churros are what my cat eats. Churro. Yeah, churros. Thank you, Sydney. What else? Yeah, cinnamon, like. You like a burger? I do like a good burger. But it's not like my favorite thing. Once I break the seal with savory foods, then it's like all hope is lost. Like if I'm at a Mexican restaurant and I have so much as one tortilla chip, one good, warm, freshly fried tortilla chip, I'm eating the whole basket. French fries, very similar. It's impossible for me to have just like one French fry. And I don't think it's bless you. I don't have an eating disorder. No, it's just that these foods are designed to be like the amount of food reward, like it's impossible. I just can't eat just one, but it's completely normal. Like the amount of food reward that a modern human derives from these kinds of combination foods, the combination of starch and oil, plus texture, like the crispiness of a fresh French fry. It's like unbelievable. If you were to give one of our ancestors, like prior to the advent of the supermarket, a French fry, I mean, that would be the most delicious thing that they would have consumed in a decade. And the idea that we're just supposed to be able to moderate our consumption of these kinds of modern foods, to me, is crazy. So that's why, for me, I find it better to just not have them, which I often fail at. Like if, good tortilla chips arrive at the table, I'm eating them. So yeah, those, I would consider those to be indulgence for me, because I don't normally bring those kinds of foods in my house because I just know that they're such potent trigger foods for me. So chips at the Mexican restaurant, French fries, things like that, and then sweets. But I guess like the asterisk that I'll add is like I also don't feel guilty for it because I know exactly how these foods, what they do to my brain. And so for me, it's like informed consent, like I'll eat more chips than anybody at the table, but I don't feel guilty for it. I know that's just what my brain wants. And I've allowed myself to have that indulgence, and I don't try to compensate for it the next day with punishment cardio or anything like that. I'm just like, it was a good time, So yeah, you got to enjoy life at the end of the day. That's kind of my perspective. I've shared with a few of you guys that I've been enjoying, or I've shared on Instagram. And I think when Mike Israetel was in, we talked about this a little bit at the latter end of the episode, but that I've begun drinking like in moderation, like the occasional Diet Coke, like one a day, because it's just so damn good. Like you really want to like go the rest of your life without drinking something that's like so damn good. And the evidence suggesting harm is way more thin than influencers and headlines would suggest. Like metabolically, they're pretty inert. People say, well, artificial sweeteners, they disrupt the gut microbiome. Yeah, in animals in massive doses. The odd Diet Coke, fridge cigarette, or Coke Zero isn't going to do anything to you negatively in terms of like an impact on a negative health outcome. There was a study that came out recently, I believe. I haven't read the study, but I've seen the headlines. You guys have sent it to me, linking artificial sweeteners with increased risk of cognitive decline. The issue with these observational studies is that you have to consider reverse causation. Like in these studies, you don't have health conscious people who are resistance training regularly and eating a largely whole foods diet, indulging in the occasional Diet Coke. No, you have people who were told to avoid sugar-sweetened beverages by their doctors and then grudgingly make the switch over to diet sodas and they're drinking the diet sodas because their health is already poor and they're trying to improve their health. So that's reverse causation. Like, it's not that the Diet Coke is causing the poor health. It's that the Diet Coke becomes the choice when the poor health arrives. And then these people who are signed up to these studies are, they're getting medical guidance, obviously. They're likely being told the truth that sugar-sweetened beverages are not good for you. They're certainly not better for you than artificially sweetened non-caloric beverages. And so that's where you get this sort of reverse causation effect. And similarly with cognitive decline, I've talked about this many times on the podcast, in the past, maybe not recently, but I've certainly written about it in Genius Foods, that people who are suffering from cognitive decline, preclinical Alzheimer's disease, for example, will develop a sweet tooth. They'll start to crave sweet foods. And that's why, these you'll see sugary foods strongly associated with Alzheimer's disease, cognitive decline. Now, the relationship there might very well be bidirectional in the sense that, there is a reverse causation aspect to it. Also, high glycemic diets, junk food diets, ultra-processed diets, as we know, also increase risk for cognitive decline. But we have to be mindful of how science works and how these claims are made and the science underpinning these claims. And so for me, it's become what I've concluded is that, and I'm not the only one here to have concluded this, that artificially sweetened non-caloric beverages are certainly better for you than sugar-sweetened beverages, and totally fine, totally benign in the grand scheme of things, provided you've got all of the other basics in order in moderation. So enjoy your Diet Coke. Man, that was a rabbit hole. I don't even, indulgence? Yeah, I guess it's like I consider it to be an indulgence. I'm not saying that you need to drink Diet Coke. I'm not saying that Diet Coke is healthy. Water is best, right? But live a little. Like, sometimes it's nice to have a Diet Coke. Get a little bit of caffeine and, you're at a movie. Like, I just don't want you guys to fear that stuff. All right, moving on. Here's actually a related question. Annie Willow asked about how do we keep a balanced approach to wellness? Well, I would say, for one, health behaviors are supposed to improve your life, not become your life. There are certainly a lot of people that have, over the years, achieved big clout on social media from the, making it appear as though their entire lives are now dominated by this pursuit of wellness and longevity. And, I really think that they're all just like fakes. I've said this, but none of these longevity gurus that I've come across on social media seem to be winning the anti-aging game at all. The opposite, in fact. So I think you have to remember that there is some truth to the aphorism that everything in moderation typically is going to lead to the best outcomes. Now, what I don't mean is that you need to drink alcohol in moderation. I think you're better off eating fewer sugar, ultra-processed foods. In general, there's no necessity for sugar-sweetened beverages, but when we embrace a lifestyle of balance and understand how the body works, you'll realize that, if you have battened down the hatches and your basics are in order, you've covered all of the foundational bases, then the dreaded sugar-sweetened beverage, once in a blue moon isn't going to be the end of the world. I mean, if you know how many, for example, calories you're consuming over the course of the day, and you've allotted 120 calories for, at the end of the day, your soda of choice, I'm not recommending that you go and do this, but you can certainly make an allocation for it where, it's not going to impose any health harm to you. So we just have to kind of be mindful of the fact that everything really can fit at the end of the day if you're making concessions and you're making trade-offs and you're architecting your life in a way that allows you to, indulge now and then, so long as it's not your baseline. So, I think that that's a really normal way to think about it. You want to think in terms of the majors, not the minors. You want to get the fundamentals right. The fundamentals are sleep, hitting your protein target most days, eating a diet comprised mainly of minimally processed foods, resistance training, walking, surrounding yourself with people whose company you enjoy, not isolating yourself from the world. I think those are all the majors. And yeah, we just can't get I think the problem for many people is that the basics are just boring, and they're also not as easily sellable by people on social media who are looking to sell you stuff. And so it's created this whole shiny object culture where people are perennially looking for novelty. And health doesn't come from chasing novelty. It comes from the basics. And doing the basics, or at least some fraction of the basics, consistently enough to see those gains manifest. And that doesn't mean that every day has to be perfect. It doesn't mean you'll never skip a workout. It doesn't mean that you'll never drink a real soda or, overindulge on the tortilla chips at the Mexican restaurant ever again. It just means that once you have this mindset of balance, you won't crash out when you do. You'll just realize that tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow you can get right back to the plan without punishing yourself for it. So hope that helps. That's been my approach for the past couple of years, certainly. I've become a lot more lax, I guess, while still keeping my sight on the prize. And yeah, my health and my body composition has improved meaningfully in tandem with that. So yeah, hope that helps. Okay, moving on. This is a different one. Well, it's not different relative to what we typically cover on the show, but this is about digestion. So McKenna Anderson asks for constipation tips. Well, this is a fairly easy one. I would say, you want to gradually increase your fiber intake. You want to make sure that you're consuming fluids. Movement is something that isn't often appreciated. If you're not moving well, I know that my digestion is off when I'm traveling and I'm just my body's compressed to a seat for hours at a time. There's a certain amount of movement that's really important when it comes to digesting your food properly. Regular meal timing is very important. There are certain foods that have been shown to help with constipation. So kiwi are a fantastic food when it comes to keeping you regular. I think the study found 2 kiwi before bed. I could be mistaken, but kiwi, really good. Prunes, also great. I happen to love prunes, and they definitely help in the regularity department. Fruits and vegetables in general, making sure that you're hydrated, getting in your daily steps, movement, making sure that you've got a routine, not least of which with regards to your meals. I think all very important stuff. When it comes to supplementation, psyllium husk is great. I've said this many times. Psyllium husk is a form of fiber that has a unique stool normalizing characteristic that it's got this unique ability to help with both constipation and diarrhea. I don't know how it works, but there have been a number of really good reviews to come out showing that this is in fact the case. It can help with irritable bowel. And it's also great for lipids and just overall health and satiety. There have been studies to show that psyllium husk consumed before meals can lead to a small but meaningful weight loss because it's so filling. It stretches out the receptors in the stomach that signal satiety to the brain. And so psyllium husk, I think, is a fantastic supplement. And then also for the occasional constipation, there's also, senna is pretty effective. You can find that in teas. There's a tea, no affiliation. I think it's the brand is Traditional Medicinals. Great brand of teas, and they have a tea called Smooth Move, which is really good. Sprouts carry it at Whole Foods. You can find it online. So that all should help. And then, if these really basic tips don't end up helping you, well then, seeing a good qualified doctor can't hurt, obviously. Not medical advice, but do that if you feel that you need medical evaluation. If there's a major change, a sudden change, definitely go see a qualified medical professional. Hope that helps. Same person, McKenna Anderson asked, how much cardio and what type should we be doing? So the general public health target is at least 150 minutes of moderate cardio a week or 75 minutes of vigorous cardio per week. I just walk. I resistance train specifically to improve my strength and my body composition. And I walk. And I walk outside. I walk on a treadmill. I walk uphill. I actually discovered, and I don't know if there's any data to support this, but you burn more calories and you get your heart rate up more from walking on an incline as compared to speeding up the treadmill, which will burn more calories, but the perceived exertion is higher when you compare walking faster to walking slower and merely just increasing the incline on the treadmill. And I've tested this. So I have these treadmills in my gym where I enter my weight and it tells you the calories per hour that you're burning at a given speed and incline. And what I've done was I was like working the knobs and levers. And what I found was that when you increase your speed, your perceived exertion is far higher, but the increase in calories burned per hour is not as high as if you were to just keep the walk at a more moderate pace and just increase the incline a little bit. So you get your heart rate up more, you burn more calories, and yet at least for me, the perceived amount of exertion is lower, which means that it's something that I'm going to be able to sustain more. So rather than trying to, walk faster, which sometimes just isn't as enjoyable for me, I'll typically walk at a slower pace and I'll just work the incline so that by the end of my walk, I'm walking at a 6 to 7% grade. And it feels very comfortable. Most of the time when I'm doing it, by the end, like I don't feel burnt out. Like I'm not left crawling to my car or anything like that. I'm still able to walk home all of the time. And so consider the incline and don't drive yourself crazy with walking faster. That would be my advice. Now, harder cardio is obviously good for you. You're training your, heart rate variability. You're training through all of these different modes of intensity, which I think obviously is going to have value. But I'm not going to recommend something to you that's not enjoyable that you're going to do for a week and then fall off the wagon, never to do again. Like, wellness is about adopting the routines that you enjoy. And that's going to take a little bit of trial and error. But at the end of the day, there's only so much motivation, so much energy, so much interest in exercise that each and every one of us has. And so I want you to do the things that you enjoy first and foremost. And so for me, honestly, it's walking, briskly walking and resistance training. So that's what I do, and I think that you're totally fine if that's your MO as well.
You've heard of 12-3-30, right?
Sydney's asking if I've heard of 12-3-30. What is that? Like a TikTok walking protocol?
Been around for forever.
Has it?
I mean, at least a good solid amount of years.
Incline 12? That's a steep incline. And then 3 is the speed for 30 minutes. Damn. That sounds totally doable. I feel like I could do that. I mean, the demons that I'd be fighting at that point would be just like the amount of time on the treadmill. Like I get bored, but if I have a podcast or if I'm like reading over some work, which is another, I think, argument in favor of walking at a more moderate pace, you can do other things while you're walking. Or if you're on like a stationary bike, you can like be on your phone playing like Flappy Bird or something. Does that game still exist? I don't know. It's like a 10-year-old, 15-year-old. I don't hold on to the sides. Yeah, I don't understand like the people that hold on to the. No, I keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. I'm not calling you stupid. It's like a saying. I don't know. Speaking of the gym, okay, so we got a question from Muscle by Mo, and shout out to Mo. I actually know Mo. Mo is a trainer at the gym I work out at, and he's a very smart guy, very passionate trainer. Knows his science, and he sent in a question. He said, what ingredient on the label automatically makes a product a no-go for you? Honestly, my answer is almost none. I look at the overall nutritional qualities of the product in question. I try to make sure generally that it's going to be, if it's an ultra processed food, that it's going to have some protein in it. That can be rare, but I tend to buy foods that that are protein enriched. I try to make sure that the food that I'm eating is not just like sugar within the first couple of ingredients, because ingredients are listed in order of their concentration in the product. So I'm making sure that I'm not just eating something that's sugary, first and foremost, or oily first and foremost. I would say you definitely don't want to consume any products with partially hydrogenated oils, but I think that those have been kind of outlawed. So I don't know how frequently you're gonna come across those in a modern supermarket. Maybe in third world countries, those are still. I mean, those are illegal now in the United States. I don't know about other countries. But generally, I'm more likely to reject a product because it is super calorie dense, low in protein and fiber, and easy to overeat. Not because it contains, xanthan gum or an artificial sweetener. Although I generally do try to keep my artificial sweetener intake low. I generally try to eat a largely gluten-free diet. I'm not saying that you need to avoid products with gluten in it, but those are generally the kinds of things that I look for. I try to make sure that it's not a highly calorie-dense product. I try to make sure that there's that I'm getting something out of it, whether it's fiber, even if it's like a dried fruit product, I'm getting some minerals, I'm getting some vitamins, some antioxidants. I'm trying to get like something out of it. I'm not just gonna like eat a Twinkie, if that makes sense. But in terms of like specific ingredients, no. I mean, even like, even if you were avoiding all seed oils, which you shouldn't actually do, because then that's going to lead to you not eating out at any restaurant ever. All restaurants use seed oils. But like, even if you take a product, right, and it has soybean oil in it, because I know many of you do avoid seed oils. I'm not going to argue you out of that position. But like, even if you take a product and it has soybean oil listed in the ingredients list, and then you look at the fat content on that product, and it has 1 gram of total fat. That's 1 gram of total soybean oil at most, because there are probably other ingredients in that food item, right, that contain fat that you're ingesting. And so that's like not in any universe a big deal. So you just want to be mindful of the truism that the dose makes the poison with everything. You can overconsume water to a degree that it'll put you in the emergency room. And again, you just want to major in the majors, not the minors. So yeah, there's not one single ingredient that I will typically avoid at all costs. Yeah. Hope that helps. And I hope that allays some of your guys' like food fears. I know it's like in the wellness industry, I feel some degree of responsibility about this stuff because, in a way I feel like I've played at least some small role in helping build the wellness industry into what it is today. And I've certainly in the past talked about my concerns about foods like industrially refined seed oils and certain dietary emulsifiers and even artificial sweeteners. But where I think I've evolved, especially over the past couple of years, is that I really do think that people tend to allow themselves too readily to hyperfixate on these small things when health comes from the big levers. Like, what are you eating 80% of the time, 90% of the time? The 10% doesn't really matter. It's about the 80, it's about the 90. And so that's what I hope, you guys have picked up from my more recent science communication. All right, this is going to be a fun one. So Lab SNMTB asks, my typical workout for the week. Details, bro. All right. Well, so my split is currently, what do? I do my chest and triceps and shoulders on one day. And then I do on the next day, my back, my biceps, and my rear delts. the backs of my shoulders. And then the day after that, I do legs. And then I take a rest day typically, and then I cycle through those 3 days all over again. For a long time, I did have a dedicated shoulder day in there, but that was, I think, I wanted to see what gains I would reap from shortening the amount of time from chest workout to chest workout, back workout to back workout, leg workout to leg workout. So I've nixed my dedicated shoulder day. And now I just do chest, triceps, and medial delts, followed by back and biceps and rear delts, followed by my legs, and then I take a rest day, and I cycle through those days again. Now, something I want to point out, I don't have a Monday equals chest day, Wednesday equals back day, Friday equals leg day. That's how I used to work out in college, but I don't think that it's smart to do it that way because, first of all, you're only working out each muscle group once a week with that kind of program. And then secondly, if you were to miss a leg workout, say you were to miss your leg workout on Friday, well, that would mean that you wouldn't get to then work out your legs for another week. So that could potentially be 2 weeks of not working out your legs. So you want to basically run each of these days. You want to run your routine on a cycle where, if I do my chest on Monday with the plan being to do my back and my biceps on Tuesday, but say like Sydney calls me with like a 5-alarm fire that's got to be put out, and for whatever reason I miss, or we've got multiple podcasts to record on that Tuesday and I miss my back and biceps day, well, then I'll just pick it up on Wednesday. And so just kind of in the back of your head, always having that where you are in the cycle, very effective, very helpful. And that's how I do it. I know a lot of people also love full body workouts. I personally don't enjoy them, although they can be very effective, especially if you're just starting out. The full body workout. I like to do more volume. I just enjoy doing multiple things. You could get by doing only one exercise and doing, lots and lots of sets, adding volume, because more volume tends to equal more hypertrophy. But I like doing multiple exercises, like in a workout for my chest, for my back. So that's the routine that I am currently on. And when it comes to cardio, as I mentioned, I don't do dedicated cardio. I'll walk. I walk to my gym. So that's about, right there. For me, that's about 7,000 steps there and back, 7,000 to 8,000 steps there and back. Sometimes I'll add some additional steps on the treadmill. I'll walk for 5 minutes on the treadmill, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, depending on how I'm feeling. I'll do that typically after my workout so as not to drain myself and to take energy away from an effective stimulus when it comes to my resistance training program. But that's pretty much it. No dedicated cardio. And then on my rest days, I try to just move my body. And moving your body doesn't have to be a heavy lift. Like for me, sometimes it's just doing chores around the house. It's like straightening up my living room, chasing my cat around, doing laundry, changing her litter box. That's pretty much it. So yeah, hope that helps. It doesn't have to be complicated. It really does not. And again, there's only so much time and energy and interest that each one of us is going to have towards, lifting. And I love lifting, but that doesn't mean that I want to spend 3 hours a day in the gym. So there's also diminishing returns. Like after if you're working out sufficiently hard with sufficient intensity to provide that stimulus to your muscles to grow, there's a point at which you just can't do any more volume. It becomes like junk volume. Like fatigue at a certain point is going to accumulate to the point where any additional volume is just stacking on fatigue, wear and tear, and the like. So I'm not saying that we all ought to target the minimal effective dose, but there is that sort of sweet spot that's going to be different for each of us. It's like it's got to be in proportion to your goals, But the minimum effective dose is pretty minimal when it comes to a time commitment. So I think that's empowering. All right, moving on. So Bree Averwater, this is a great question. Most persistent nutrition myths that you want to end? Well, there's a few of them. Fruit makes you fat. That's a big one. Carbs automatically make you fat. I think that if you're avoiding carbohydrates for fat loss, I think potentially that is a big mistake because first of all, fats are highly calorie dense. Oil in particular is the most calorie dense food that a human being will ever eat. And so it becomes a lot more difficult to manage your calorie intake when you're eating a high-fat diet. It's just like inherent to the nature of the macronutrient. It's a very calorie-dense macronutrient. On top of that, there are some advantages that carbohydrates have that fat doesn't. So for one, fat is very easily stored. It's easily burned, but it's also very easily stored. And it has a negligible thermic effect, whereas the thermic effect of protein is far higher than that of both carbohydrates and fat, but even carbohydrates have a higher thermic effect typically than fat. Now, the thermic effect of food is in terms of the pie of your overall total daily energy expenditure is very small, so it's not something that we necessarily need to hyperfixate on, but the calorie density of fat is certainly something to be mindful of. And the other thing that I'll say about carbohydrates being not just permissible when trying to lose fat, but may provide an advantage is that carbohydrate-based foods, whole carbohydrate-based foods are some of the most satiating foods that exist. Now, this is like a major point that most people underappreciate. There was a study that was published in the 90s, the satiety index, where researchers took about 250 calories of foods and they fed them to volunteers. And the baseline was white bread. It was like they gave it a ranking of 100. And they ranked basic foods in the 90s in accordance with how sated, how filling these foods were to their human volunteers after, I think, about 15 minutes and then an hour. And what they found was that some of the most satiating foods were carbohydrate-based. On balance, protein tends to be the most satiating macronutrient, but carbohydrate-based foods like oatmeal, like potatoes, even rice on its own was more satiating than white bread. And so if you're avoiding these foods, not only are you inherently then going to have to replace those foods with fat, right? Which it's a lot more difficult to gauge the calorie density of fats, but you're avoiding these foods which are so filling. Like if you go right now on YouTube, I mean, finish watching this video first, but like if you search for, bodybuilder, 7 days out from prep or 7 weeks out from like their contest prep, they're eating white rice, they're eating potatoes. Potatoes are highly satiating. And so that's why I think the whole like carbs automatically make you fat, that is awful dogma that needs to die. Like we really do need to. Now, on the other hand, like a lot of people do like ketogenic diets. So if that is the diet that works for you and you are happy with your progress and your health, your labs look good, your body composition is good, then by all means, continue to eat in your ketogenic style of eating. If you are trying to treat some kind of neurological condition or mental health issue where there's evidence in support of a ketogenic intervention, by all means, try it. Chris Palmer, psychiatrist, Georgia Eid. These are some psychiatrists who are really, ushering in nutritional psychiatry and are showing that ketogenic diets, although, the human evidence isn't where we want it to be, they're showing that ketogenic diets, because of their impact on the brain, there are some potential benefits there to be explored. But ketogenic diets are very hard to maintain, and so they're not something that I recommend. On the other hand, or for the general population, I should say. But on the other hand, like you don't need to be on a ketogenic diet to lose fat and to achieve a phenomenal body composition. Like most bodybuilders are not on ketogenic diets. They're eating copious amounts of white rice, copious potatoes, copious bread. Why? Because carbohydrate-based whole foods are very satiating. And then when it comes to training, they also give you extra fuel in the tank to crush your workouts, which is so crucially important when it comes to maintaining muscle as you're losing fat. So carbs do not automatically make you fat. That's a nutrition myth that I wish would die. Eating after a certain hour makes you fat. nonsense. The problem is that when the foods that we tend to eat after a certain hour tend to be not the best foods for us. They tend to not be very satiating. They tend to be foods that we're able to eat mindlessly while watching Love Island. Like, that's a big problem. There is no magical hour after which point foods automatically become fat. So don't worry about that. I would say most people, I don't know if this is so much a myth, but most people completely underappreciate that you can diet perfectly. You can maintain a small calorie deficit Monday through Friday, and then on the weekend easily decimate that calorie deficit with 1 or 2 restaurant meals, even one restaurant meal, one indulgent restaurant meal, if I'm being honest, with drinks included. I mean, I can go to a restaurant and, Brazilian all you can eat, and, say I have I don't really drink very much, but say I throw a cocktail into the mix, like easily 2,500 calories worth of food, especially if we're consuming like fatty meats and bacon wrapped dates and Wagyu sliders. And these are like highly calorie dense foods. And then restaurant foods in general tend to be so oily and so fatty and so creamy that most people completely underappreciate the calorie density of your average restaurant meal. In fact, studies show that your average restaurant meal in the United States has over 1,200 calories. For like your average person, it's more than a day's worth of their total daily energy expenditure in one meal. And that's just the entree. That's not including the appetizer. It's not including and the other thing, just adding insult to injury, like restaurant posted calorie counts can be wildly inaccurate. There was another study that found that on average restaurant calorie, because like nobody's in the back weighing butter, right? Restaurant posted calorie numbers can sometimes be 20 per the meal that you get, and it can be anywhere between 20% higher and like 3 times higher. I think certain sides had like 3 times the calories as compared to what was posted on menus. So you don't want to go by that. It's like, they're like good general ballpark estimates, but they are not very precise. So you just want to be mindful of that. Hope that helps. It is depressing, but it's true. It's like restaurants, their food is designed to be delicious, and they excel at that. Many of them, not all of them. But they are certainly not, orchestrated for health, and certainly not for fat loss. So you just want to be really careful when eating out. It's just not, eating out regularly and fat loss are just not, they're strange bedfellows. They are not really compatible at the end of the day, sadly, because I love eating out. But I've gotten in the best shape just from eating home more. And it's like, it's a balance too, because that can be very antisocial. And socializing is very important for health and for longevity. So there's that. But it is just the bitter truth of eating out today that there are ways to do it. Like sticking to basic meals, I think makes it a lot easier to control the variables. So like you go to a steakhouse, it's like you have like steak. Maybe you ask for them to do it like dry, like you ask them to skip the pat of butter that comes on top. You ask them to steam your vegetables because, most vegetable sides, as I mentioned, like grossly underestimate the amount of calories that are posted. Like they typically will arrive at the table with far more calories than what is shown on the menu, if the menu shows any calorie counts at all. And then you throw drinks into the mix, and it could just be like a recipe and also variety. Like variety increases our desire to eat more. Like just variety itself. Like humans, we're hardwired to chase novelty when it comes to eating opportunities. So yeah, just like cook home as much as you can, and then save your eating out for, weekends, and understand that all it takes is one super indulgent restaurant meal to blow an entire week's worth of calorie deficit. Sadly. Hope that helps. All right, last question. Chris Rellas asks, how are you feeling after your ADR, my artificial disc replacement? Thanks for the question, Chris. Thanks for the concern. I'm feeling great still. We are about a year and a half out from my artificial disc replacement. So for those who don't know, I now have a prosthetic L5-S1 disc feels totally normal, which is wild to say. I feel like I have a totally normal, healthy back. No limitations, although I just try not to be stupid. So I'm not barbell squatting. I'm not, I in general am pretty like physically risk averse. Like I don't like to put myself in harm's way. You go looking for trouble, you'll find it. And so I'm not somebody who seeks out physical, like risky physical activities. Like I'm not an adventurer in that way. I enjoy my risks to be like creative, if that makes any sense. So all that being said, yeah, my L5-S1 artificial disc replacement continues to feel great, continues to be life-changing. I feel like I have like a renewed, like I've been given like a second chance. Like, it's kind of a crazy thing to say, but that's how I feel. So it's, I think, in part why I've become so dedicated to evangelizing resistance training and getting healthy, and because I really feel like, like I have this renewed passion for what it means to feel good in your body, and I want that feeling for everybody, and I want people to aspire to that and to implement these basics so as to feel it for themselves safely, of course. So thank you for the question. Yeah, I'm feeling great. And if you are interested yourself in the surgery, it's a lumbar artificial disc replacement. I had a Pro Disc L put in, and I've done two podcasts with my surgeon, Dr. Jared Ament, and you can find them both on the YouTube channel and in our podcast. But the first one was a deep dive into the technology, the procedure, the recovery, the lead up, who the surgery is right for, who it maybe not is as good of a fit for. And so you can check that out. Just search Jared Ament on the channel, AMENT, and you'll find it. There are a number of wonderful orthopedic surgeons, neurosurgeons who are performing the surgery. Not enough. It's still fairly niche, and it's not covered by insurance for many people. I think in some instances it may be, I don't know, or it might be covered, some component of it may be covered. I think for me, like the anesthesiologist was covered, but the surgery and the implant itself was not covered. I don't know, but for me it was life-changing. And so, yeah, definitely check it out if you are suffering from degenerative disc disease. Yeah, it's a great option. And it's not the best for everybody. Some people genuinely do need fusion. I didn't want fusion, and I'm so grateful that I found out about artificial disc replacement because, again, it's changed my life. And I walked out of the hospital after the surgery, and my back has felt like I feel like I have a normal, healthy back. It's incredible. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Love you all. Again, hope you're having a fantastic summer. Thank you for staying subscribed to The Genius Life, for following us on all the channels, for continuing to share our content. Your support means the world to me. And just sending love to you wherever you happen to be. And that's it. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.